Thank you all for joining. How are you? Well, just wanted to give you a quick introduction of what we're going to be talking about. Authentication, really where it starts, what we're doing for customers, as well as SaaS applications, what we have actually done at Okta in our Auth0 platform, and how we've embedded a Bedrock to help guide our customers, as well as how you can do that as well and safeguarding them. And of course, our new topic here with authorization for Gen AI. My name is Andre Escobar. I'm a senior manager for Field Solutions. I've been a developer for almost 20 years, working on many different applications across fintech and now at Okta. Well, first let's start off with what is customer identity, right? Think about what that experience that user for the first time has, right? The experience that is when they're going into your application, signing in, and being able to access the application that you have built. You can see that across many different apps, web apps, and that really gives you an idea of the experience is really important, right? So yes, you might be a software company, but really you're an experience company as well. People are really interested in customer identity applications, such as, here we have some that we've done with Auth0, like flowers.com, Capital One. If you have used those before, ChatGPT, you're able to really see how easy it is to get that flow going, right? Making sure you're able to access that application. That lack of friction, getting you to that checkout, right? Easy logging is easy checkout is what we say. So if you have that kind of application, this is where that customer identity resides. And of course, there's also SaaS applications, right? This is applicable to SaaS applications and that you want to allow customers like ourselves. Elysian's a great example here. They're also here, great partners of ours. As a customer, you might be using your own login, but you could also use your Federate login from your enterprise. So for example, I use my Okta email, and I'm able to access it, and it brings me through my Okta login as an SSO, right? So making sure that user has that experience, whether they're coming as an individual or through an enterprise. Now, customer login is really beyond just a login, right? We're talking about not just creating a box with an email password. It's really creating an experience to allow these customers to go in and use your technology. And sometimes it feels like it could be really simple, right? I could build it myself. How hard can it be? It starts out with using maybe a smaller server for just emails and passwords. But then, of course, they ask you, hey, social login is something we would like to implement. Right away you start integrating that, but there's different standards in different social logins, so you might have to start supporting those. And then you have to start adding support for users, right? So you might actually have to create email servers, or you might start getting fake logins, or people trying to go across that and create fraud, right? So that is a big issue that a lot of folks have, and so they start creating all this infrastructure to take care of that, right? Not only do you need to verify the emails, but you also need to stand up an email server, and then of course that brings you to the next part, right? What about integrations? How are we going to support these users? How are we going to get them into our CRM system? And this is just for one app, right? What if you have multiple apps? Then you have to start thinking of white labeling that platform to be able to support not just your web app, but also your mobile apps, your desktop apps, whatever it may be. And then, of course, you start getting into security side as well, and you need to integrate MFA factors like Twilio, or in your mobile app, you might want to have phone number recognition, Face ID. So all of this, it starts out with, it's just a login, but it's really not. And this is how kind of that builds, right? We call this the identity maturity curve, where it starts out with one region, right? You're like, okay, I'm just going to do this in the US, or I'm going to do this just in Canada. And then you start building these systems hey, customer support, but then you start thinking about hey, I'm getting DDoSed, or there's a lot of people trying to access these accounts after a data breach, right? So you start creating these systems that it started with the login, and now you're maintaining an infrastructure instead of really keeping up with your product, right? And talking about safeguarding your customers is going to be key. So with what you should keep in mind is there's a couple things you have to keep in mind when you're dealing with customer identity. It's not just about making sure that they have the right email and password. You're going to have to start building things on top, such as understanding how to really safeguard against bot detections, for example. Bot detection is able to really help you understand if bots are trying to reach your website, and if they are, you can challenge those, right? You can build this yourself again, but again, you're starting to build that infrastructure, right? Breach password detection, if there's something in a breach, making sure that those passwords aren't used on your website. And this could be particularly important if you have a fintech system, right? Or something where there is information such as addresses or financial information. And of course, thinking about like suspicious IP throttling, right? Like if you see attacks coming from many different IPs, you're going to have to stand up infrastructure for that as well. Brute force attacks on specific accounts, you're going to have to start also setting up policies that if people try to sign in a couple times, right? So as you see, it starts to become not just a login, you're going to have to start thinking about securing that. This is built into Auth0 right now, and it's available right as you log in, and your users are able to get that as they log in. And of course, you want to add also multi-factor. For example, you might want to do this in the beginning of, especially when you're adding this to, for example, if you're on your Robinhood account, right, like or something, or your Wells Fargo account, you want to set up an MFA factor right away because it's kind of dictating to. However, if you're a customer that's just trying to buy something, you don't want to set up an MFA factor, right? So keeping that in mind as to where to strategically place that MFA is also key. We also recommend step-up MFA, right? So like if a person's trying to change their credit card information, or they're trying to change their address for mailing, you might want to set up an MFA so somebody doesn't do it fraudulently, right? For that, we also, you want to take that into account, adaptive multi-factor authentication. So not just taking into account what the what MFA they might have, but the context of that MFA, right? So are they trying to do impossible travel? Why don't we then trigger an MFA factor, right? Or if they're trying to access it from a different laptop, right? Maybe that's a good time to also hit an MFA, right? So keeping that all in mind. Again, this is all already built into the Auth0 platform. And of course, there's machine to machine, which applies to Gen AI, right? And what you're going to be doing especially with Gen agents. Machine to machine is something you need to consider for authorization, where you need to start securing those applications on the API layer, not just on the front end. So that being said, what have we done with that at Auth0? With Amazon Bedrock, we were actually able to build a system. I'm going to show you a quick video on this and how we currently implemented it. And it's a video on how we're able to log in. And it's simple. As you can see, you could have your social, you log into your platform. And in this case, we're using Bedrock to actually showcase and show Guide AI. Guide is a chat platform. It's basically Bedrock that's able to chat with you and help you, guide you on, for example, I'm asking it, how can I migrate users from a database? And it's able to then give me actual directions on how to do that, right? Going beyond that is what we are going to be talking about in terms of auth for Gen AI. Authorization for Gen AI is going to be key. We see what we're able to do now with current Gen AI agents, but going beyond that, right? You have to start thinking about what are the requirements when you build Gen AI applications. And at first, starting out is AI needs to know who that user is, right? And to showcase this, I'm going to actually use a picture. It's actually screenshots of an application that at the end I will have a QR code that you're going to be able to try. So feel free to follow this, but we could also you'll be able to actually do this live. So when AI is trying to access data, right? It needs to know the context of why they're doing it. Think of help desks, right? Think of when they're trying, or think of like what we were just doing just then, right? Like accessing information for it to get help. But think of that beyond. Whereas we're going to use an example here. We call this Market Zero. This is the application that you're going to be able to try later. This application is, for example, a stock application that allows you to not just look up the stock prices, information about it, but also it allows you to buy stock through it, right? So think of this more so in this context as well, but also how can you bring this to your IT help desk, right? Having the context of the conversations and being able to access is going to be key. So in this case, I signed in, so I'm asking it, what's the price for this Cisco stock? And it's able to then tell me right away, very public information, right? But it also is trying to prompt me to join a newsletter, right? So joining the newsletter is going to also give me access to different things, right? Which leads me to the second part, is AI data access must consider the user's permissions, right? Especially with AI RAG environments and what you're trying to get information from. You're gonna need to make sure that it has access to the documents that the user only has access to, right? You wouldn't want them to have access to all of the documents across what everybody has access to. So this is gonna be key. And you're gonna be able to do this with our platform as well as, but also you could build this yourself, of course, with OpenFGA. We have that available. But centralizing those authorizations to make sure that the user and the AI agent have those same permissions to access those documents. So for example, I clicked on joining the newsletter, and now since I have access to that, I am now able to access even deeper information that this Market Zero application has. Think of how powerful that could be if you're trying to give contextual data to the RAG AI agent to make sure that they have access to generated content. So if there's a help desk, for example, and they already have the chat history, they know what the AI agent knows what the user's asking for it. So this is really key as well, right? Which brings me to number 3. AI uses a lot of async interactions, right? Especially AI agents. With AI agents, you're able to give the user really a way to increase their productivity by setting some type of parameters, right? They might not happen right away, but they could happen in the future. And that's going to be key as well, to have that authentication be able to be rechecked before the AI agent does something is going to be key. And for this example, I'm actually going to ask to buy 10 shares of Zico for 15 when it drops under $15, right? This is something I could send out, and it's just gonna set it up. The authorization that it's gonna require, we call it SIBA. So that is gonna be a client-initiated back-end authorization that you can then have it so that if this conditions are met, the AI agent can then request to do something, right? And it will check with you before doing so. But we're gonna let that one sit because that's async, so we're not gonna see the results of that right away. And then for the next one, the AI agent really needs to have and call APIs on the user's behalf, right? So not just doing something for the user via an interface, but also doing something via an API, right? And we need to make sure, again, to make sure you know who the user is, what access the user has, and of course what APIs they can call. So in this case, I could also say, hey, I want to show the upcoming events for Seco, and I also want to add that to my calendar, right? And when I click on this, and you're going to be able to try this, it's a little bit more interactive when you do it in the demo, but you're able to see that you can connect that directly, and this is what the Auth is doing. You can connect that directly to your Google Calendar or anything else, via API, and then it's able to take actions on behalf of that customer, right? So this can go beyond just allowing that user to programmatically add the calendar. It actually allows them to use any APIs they might have access to. And then going back to that async request, it looks like the price of that the stock has actually gone below $15. So it then requests me. It could be via your phone, but it double checks again with that SIBA to approve that, right? So it still requires you to approve that, but this is what we call channel, channel initiated backend authorization, CIBA, and allows you to create these actions, right? So think not just for this type of use case, but other use cases where you might want to set conditions that require authorization or user confirmation at the end. And as promised, please scan this QR code. This will take you to the actual Auth0.ai page, where you'll be able to try this demo and see what you need to build your applications, your Gen AI applications securely and quickly. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be here for here.